we today have with us Naomi. And Naomi, would you be able to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to pray and start?
Sure. Actually, why don't I leave it for a minute, and it's part of my presentation. So why don't we pray and then I'll start.
Sounds
That's
good.
okay.
No, that sounds good. Naomi, pray for us then in that case. Yeah.
All right. Father God, we thank you so much for the opportunity to meet as global pathfinders, to learn, to share, and to actually fellowship with each other online. Lord, we thank you for this time, that even though it's happened in the most of uncertain times, we thank you for giving us this opportunity. We thank you for Dayan and his service. And Lord, I pray personally that this will be a blessing to everybody listening. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. And Naomi, it is
All
your
right.
time. So whenever you want, share the screen.
I'm trying.
Just to let you know, before Naomi, when I was a youth pastor, Stamford Park, she was one of my teenagers. Now that tells you how old I am. I look, but I'm much older probably than I look. Maybe
Can
not.
you see my screen, Dayan?
Yes, we can see your screen, Naomi.
Awesome.
And then here it is. The full screen is up. Excellent. Thank you, Naomi.
No worries. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Just before we begin, I want everyone to stand up where you are, because I know that many of you have been listening for lots and lots and lots of hours. So we're just going to do a quick stretch. Get ourselves moving. Dayan, get up on your feet. You're still sitting down. Everybody stretch. Get your arms moving. Do a little dance. All right. Perfect. Stretch it out. That's lovely. Cool. All right. We're ready for the physical fitness honor. As Dayan said, my name is Naomi, and I live near Dayan, actually, near London in England. And I work for the British Olympic and Paralympic teams. So that's really exciting. And the way that I got into that was that I did a master's in sports psychology, and I studied sports science at university. So I really, really love sport. I'm really into fitness, really into keeping healthy. So I'm really looking forward to sharing my passion with you today, but also helping you complete your physical fitness honor. So these are some of my favorite athletes. I don't know if any of you can comment in the comments as to how many you know. So this is Serena Williams. We've got Aaron Rodgers for any of our American fans. We've got Cristiano Ronaldo down there for football fans. This is Emma Wiggs, who I went to school with, who's a Paralympic gold medalist. And then, of course, Simone Biles, who's the best gymnast the world has ever seen. So these are some of the super fit people that exist in the world today. But you don't have to be an Olympian or a Paralympian to be fit and healthy. We can do it too, even if we're not competing on the world stage. And the point of this honor and the point of this presentation today is to help you make an exercise program that helps you get the honor, but also helps you be fit and healthy generally. So that's what we're going to do this afternoon. So let's get started. For this honor, you will need the worksheet that was made available to you using the link. I don't know if Dayan can post that again for people that haven't seen it.
Yeah, we can.
Perfect. That would be great. Yeah. So that's got all the requirements on it. So the presentation will take you through all the requirements, but if at any point you need to go back, we'll make the slides available to you afterwards as well. So don't feel like if you've missed something that you're not going to get it. You will get it. We'll just keep going through. So we all know that being physically active is really important. We do PE at school. Adults get out and they do jogging, or they cycle, or they swim, and they do things that they really enjoy. But why do we do it? What's the point of being physically active? So there are physical benefits to being physically active. People think this one is strange sometimes because people think that when they exercise, they get tired, and that's true. But actually, when people regularly exercise, their energy goes up, and that's really key. You know, we spend a lot of time at school, we spend a lot of time at work, and those things drain our energy. But actually, by investing in exercise, our overall energy levels go up, and that's really important. We all know as well that exercise uses lots of energy, and that can be really useful if we're trying to control our weight, if we're trying to be a bit healthier. You know, we can use exercise to control our weight. If we're happy with where we are, we can use it to control our weight. But if we put on a couple of pounds and we need to lose them, then exercise can be really helpful for that as well. exercise is proven to be really good for our digestion as well. So there are lots of studies that show that if you regularly exercise and you're regularly engaging in physical activity, then actually your tummy is less sore, it's more able to process your food, and it's generally more regular. So that's a really, really good benefit. My best friend is a dietitian, and she's always saying to her patients, you must exercise to make sure your body is fit and healthy and able to digest food. Now, this is a really important one for me. I've had loads and loads of injuries growing up, playing lots of sports, but actually sport and physical activity can really help us with our bone strength, you know. The more exercise we do, the more blood there is flowing around the body, the healthier our bones are, and that actually makes us less susceptible to many of the injuries that people can suffer. As we get older, our bones get weaker. And so as we get older, it's still really important to exercise to make sure that our bones don't crack and don't break, which can sometimes happen. We could also just get fewer aches and pains if we exercise. You know, our bones are healthier, our muscles are stronger, and so you're more able to perform daily life. You know, you're more able to pick up children or carry your school bag and do things in your daily life, you know, carry heavy shopping bags with fewer aches and pains. So that's a really, really good benefit of exercise. And there are a few more. So, as we said, you get stronger muscles. The more that you exercise, you get stronger muscles, which can help you in your daily life. Dayan's got 2 children, and the more he can lift them, the easier it is. That's because he's got stronger muscles. So that's really a really important reason to exercise. But we also know that it helps our heart and it helps our lungs. So the more we exercise, you know, our heart is a muscle, the stronger our heart gets, which means that it's able to pump blood around the body quicker, stronger, and it's also able to last longer than it might do otherwise. So it's really important for our hearts that we continue to exercise. And you get an improved immune function. So immune function is all about your susceptibility to sickness. And right now is a really important time to be talking about that. So the stronger your immune system is, the fewer coughs and colds you might get, the fewer sickness bugs you might get, the fewer viruses you might pick up. So it's really important to have a strong immune system, which can be helped by exercise, to make sure that you don't get nasty bugs that can go around. And for any ladies out there, it is really helpful with pregnancy and childbirth. So we do say to people, keep exercising when you're pregnant, but just don't go so hard. Dayan, was there a question?
No, it wasn't a question. Well, maybe it was a question. Somebody wrote and said, he says, I want to go jogging, but in Proverbs 28:1 says that the wicked run when nobody is chasing them. And so you're just saying this scripture is not helping you. You need to go and be active. Is that right?
I don't think that person is quite interpreting scripture in the right way.
No, me 100% correct. That's right. So
I think. Yeah, you know, the Bible talks about us running races. You know, Paul in Colossians, Paul is in Corinthians is saying we must run the race for God, and therefore we must be really fit and healthy. So it's really important to do that. But I'm not going to get into the theology. So you only need 10 reasons, 10 benefits of being physically active on your sheet. But it'd be really great to see, you know, diversity in those 10 reasons. So a couple of physical and a couple of psychological, and then maybe 1 or 2 social reasons as well that we'll come on to. So psychological is all about your brain. So now we're talking about how being physically fit can help our minds, help our brains, help our mental health. So we know that the more physically active people are, the better and the longer they sleep. So some people think that if they go for exercise and they go for a run, that they'll be awake forever because their body's just buzzing. But actually, if you go running regularly, if you exercise regularly, then your body gets into a routine, and your body also needs to sleep to rest. So actually, we know that being physically active really helps with sleep. We also know that it really helps with brain function and concentration. So I always say to my youth and my teenagers who are studying for exams, make sure you still go for exercise, make sure you're still getting out and about, go for a walk, go for a run, go swimming, do something to get you active because it will really help your brain concentration. Also, we know that exercise makes us feel happier. Exercise releases endorphins, and endorphins are the way that the body makes us happy. It's a natural reaction to make the mind happy, which is awesome. So we know that, you know, exercise can be hard, but every time you do exercise, you feel better for it, don't you? You love the feeling when you've done it. So that's really important, and it's really important to make ourselves feel happy at this really weird time. So it's still really important to be exercising and to boost our self-esteem and confidence. We also know that exercise helps us handle stress. So exercise, if you think about going boxing, if you think about boxing, one of those pads, then we know that fighting helps us release the stress that we're feeling, helps us get rid of all those negative feelings that have built up at school or at work, and we just get rid of them, and then we feel so much better. So exercise is really important for your brain as well as for your body. And then finally, there are a couple of reasons why exercise is good for our social lives as well. So fitness activities, sports, team sports, just meeting someone at the gym or playing tennis with someone is a really great way to meet people, to meet your friends, to create social bonds, and that's really, really important. But also, the fitter you are, the more activities are available to you. You know, if you're able to run quite fast, then you might be able to go skiing. And that opens up a whole new world of possibilities to you. So you only need 10 of those reasons on your sheet. I think we ran through about 15 to 20. So you can choose the ones perhaps that are most important to you and the most significant benefits that you get out of exercise. So for me, I really enjoy the stress relief. I really enjoy how it helps me sleep, but I also really understand the benefits of having strong bones. So just take a minute and think about what's most important for you when you exercise and jot those down on your worksheet.
Nami, we have a few questions, if it's possible.
Sure.
We go to the next slide. Somebody is asking, you know, how maybe you will address this later, so just let us know. Somebody saying, how long do you know, how long would everybody need to exercise a day? And another question is, would the exercise help my epilepsy? And because obviously I think the person has some seizures.
Sure. Okay. The first one, which is about exercise duration and frequency, we're going to cover later in the presentation. So that's a really important question. And it's so important that I've made sure we've covered it later on in the presentation. So I'll come back to that. Exercise has been shown to help epilepsy, but I don't want to give that person too much advice without knowing exactly what type of epilepsy they have, and what has worked for them in the past and what hasn't worked for them in the past. So I don't want to get too trapped in there.
Another question came through and said, would running give you a heartburn?
It shouldn't do.
It shouldn't do. Okay.
If your heart is hurting when you're running, just go a bit slower.
Okay. Very good.
All right. So we're now going to talk about physical fitness on a more holistic level. So talking about how we can achieve a balance for our bodies by being fit. So there are a few components to being physically healthy. The first of which obviously is exercise. So God designed us to be active people. The body is designed to be active. The body needs to be active to thrive. So we know that God, as the master creator, as the master designer, as the master scientist, wants us to be healthy, wants us to be active. Unfortunately, our lives now are quite sedentary, which means that we spend quite a lot of time sitting down. We sit down at work, we sit down at school, we sit down in the car or in the bus. And actually what we're seeing is that the bodies in modern life are struggling because they're not being used how God wants them to be used. So in your worksheet, it talks something about the importance of engaging in exercise to be physically healthy. So as we've just discussed, we know that exercise helps our lung and our heart function. We know that it helps us transport blood around the body to make sure that we're healthy, to make sure that oxygen's getting to our muscles, and make sure that toxins are getting out of our muscles, which is really important. Exercise kind of reduces the likelihood of heart disease and heart attacks and strokes, which is obviously incredibly important. It makes our joints stronger so we can avoid arthritis, and it helps us manage our weight as well. And as I said earlier, it helps produce endorphins to keep us happy, and I think that's really important right now. So that's why exercise is really important in maintaining a balance for our bodies. So have a jot down of that on your worksheets, but as I said, the slides will be made available. So if you don't catch anything now, it's perfectly okay. I know you've been online for a long time and I don't want to make it longer than it needs to be. So we know the importance of healthy diets. We know that they can help with our physical well-being. You know, we know that eating fruits and vegetables is really good for us. But we also know that if we eat too much rubbish, we start to feel quite sad, quite lethargic, quite slow and tired. But we also know that if we eat healthily, then we're able to do more, we're able to be more active in our communities, and that really helps our spiritual well-being as well. So a healthy diet, I think, is really key to our physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. So a lot of you will know this from school and from other things, but we know that a healthy diet contains things like vitamins and minerals, and those things help us with strong bones, but they also help us fight illnesses, which is what I talked about earlier around immune function. We also know that we need to have a balance of fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. Now, people can sometimes be quite negative towards fats and carbohydrates in particular, but so long as you're having them in a balance, you need all of those things. It's not just it's okay to have those things. The body actually needs fat. The body actually needs carbohydrates. It's really important that we're taking those things in. And it's important as well that we're taking those things in quantities that are suitable to our body. So my fiance, he is quite a large man. He plays rugby for his country, and he eats a lot more than I eat, purely because he's bigger than me and because he trains a lot harder than me and needs the energy. Whereas I don't play rugby to that level, I don't play it at all. And so I have a much smaller calorie intake than he does, simply because our bodies are doing different things. And we know with calories that regardless of what someone weighs, you know, if they're a healthy weight, if they're a little bit underweight or overweight, regardless of what they weigh, if they eat more calories than they use, then they will probably gain weight. Whereas if they eat fewer calories than they use, and we use calories all the time, I'm using calories now just by talking, we use them doing exercise, we use them reading, we use them sleeping, you know, we use them all the time. If we eat fewer calories than we use, then we will lose weight. That's why it's really important to make sure that the calories we're intaking are what we want to be. So here we've got a really interesting kind of explanation of not just what things are, but also what they do in the body, and the dangers of perhaps having too much or too few. So we know that carbohydrates, like things like bread, things like cake, I love both of those things, biscuits, rice, all my favorite foods. Carbohydrates provide energy to keep the body functioning. So carbohydrates are super, super important because it's where we get most of our energy from. The night before, you know, Mo Farah or one of these amazing athletes runs a marathon, they will always eat pasta because pasta is full of carbohydrates to keep them going. So it's really important we eat carbohydrates for energy. However, if we eat too many carbohydrates and we intake too much energy that we don't use, we can put on weight. And carbohydrates are often full of sugars that can damage our teeth. So we need to make sure that we're not having too many carbohydrates. But also we're going to make sure we don't have too few, because if we have too few, then we can get hungry. And if you're anything like me, when you get hungry, you get angry. So you get hangry. But also our brain, and like Dayan too, I can testify to that. But also our brains actually slow down if we don't take in enough carbohydrates, because our brain uses carbohydrates to think and speak and write. So it's really important that we take in enough carbohydrates. Fats. Now fats take a little bit of a different role to carbohydrates. They do provide some energy, but they also carry stuff around the body. So fats are like our transport service. They take vitamins around the body, they take hormones around the body, but also they just keep us warm and they protect our organs, and that's really essential. But a little bit like carbohydrates, if we take in too much, then we can put on weight, and fats can clog up our blood vessels. So it's important we don't take too much in, because then we can suffer from heart attacks and strokes, and that's quite scary. So we've got to make sure that that's managed quite carefully. But as I said earlier, it's important that we have enough, because if we have too little fat, then we can be hungry and hangry, and our brains can slow down. We can be moody, but also if we don't have enough fat in our body to keep us warm, we get cold. And you know, once the body gets cold, that can be quite dangerous too. So it's all about moderation. It's all about balance. Now, proteins are really key because they build and repair body tissues. So whenever you hurt yourself, whenever you exercise, the body needs proteins to repair itself. So it's important that we have enough protein to keep us going. Otherwise, we can lose muscle, or our muscles can get weaker and more tired. But if we have too many, then it can result in headaches, dehydration, and bad breath. And that's pretty gross. We don't want that. So eat enough proteins, but not too many. Vitamins and minerals. So vitamins and minerals, you know, you've got loads. You've got A, B, C, D, blah, 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 blah. And they all do something different. So some of them help with our immune function. Some of them help with our eyesight. And some of them help repair the body, a little bit like proteins. If we have too many, they can make us sick, because the body can only take in so many vitamins and it doesn't know what to do with the rest of them, and it gets a bit confused. But it's important that we take in enough, because if we don't, then all the benefits that we just discussed of vitamins, like helping with immune function, helping with bone strength, we don't get. So we could be sick, we could get coughs and colds, we could get weak bones, which means they could break more often than they might do otherwise, and that's not fun. And our eyesight could get deteriorated. So again, really important that we're taking in the right amount of vitamins and minerals. And we've talked about calories. We've talked about how if we have too many, we can gain weight. And if we have too few, we can lose weight. That's not necessarily a bad thing. There are some people who need to gain weight to be healthy. There are some people who need to lose weight to be healthy. It's all about understanding what you need for your body. All right. Finally, this is a topic I'm really passionate about. It's mental health. Mental health is not a scary thing. Everybody has it. Everybody has a brain that has feelings and thoughts, and it's all about making sure that those feelings and thoughts are positive, and we're not being hard on ourselves and mean to ourselves, because that's not fun for anyone. So it's really important for us to understand how we're feeling and why we're feeling that way. You know, earlier this morning, I was tired because I didn't get enough sleep last night, and that's because I stayed up too late watching TV. So it's really important to understand how we're feeling and why. It's also really important to understand that everybody goes like this. So sometimes you're on a high, you're feeling good, you're happy. Sometimes you're feeling sad, and that's okay. Everybody feels that way. Sometimes the downs can feel quite overwhelming, and that's when it's really important to have some strategies available to you that you can use when you might be a bit sad. Now, exercise is fantastic here, because exercise, we know, releases endorphins. It makes us happy. We also know that when we hit exercise targets, it makes us feel good. We also know that when we hang out with people and exercise, we get social support, and that makes us feel good too. And also, remember I talked about boxing earlier? It helps us get rid of all of our negative feelings, helps us get rid of all of our stresses and all that kind of stuff. And we kind of punch it out and we get it all out, and then we feel so much better at the end. So exercise is super important for helping us with our mental health. Diane, I'll pause for a second. Are there any questions around topic number 2 that I need to address now?
No, not for now. People are just commenting on what you're talking, but generally at the moment, no questions that they're directed to you at the moment, anyway.
Okay, great. We'll carry on then. So this is a really fun topic. It's types of exercise. Now, when you think about types of exercise, you might think, oh, swimming, running, cycling, lifting weights. But actually, we can unpick it a bit more to make it more specific. So there are lots of different types of muscle contractions. When a muscle contracts, it shortens, and then something happens in the body. So an isometric muscle contraction is when a muscle contracts, but nothing moves. So if you look at what I'm doing now, I'm pushing my palms up against each other, and my muscles are moving. I can feel it in my arms. It hurts, it hurts, it hurts, but nothing's moving. My palms aren't moving. They're just pressing against each other. And that's what an isometric muscle contraction is. It's when you're working, but nothing's moving. okay? So we see a lot of these exercises used in rehabilitation or physiotherapy because it's a good way to strengthen the muscles without putting too much of a load on them. So earlier this year, sorry, I broke my hand, I broke my wrist. And one of the exercises I had to do was this, because it doesn't force me to push against a really hard weight. I'm just pushing against myself and I can control the strength of the push. And that's why we use it very often in medical situations, in rehabilitation situations. So other examples of isometric contractions, not just this one, might be holding a weight in front of you, like that. See, there's no movement, but my muscles are still working to hold the bottle up. It might be sitting against a wall, or even carrying a heavy shopping bag, not swinging it, but just holding it still as you're carrying it out of the shop. So this is my lovely fiance, and he's going to demonstrate some isometric muscle contractions for you here. So here you can see he's standing very still. The weight isn't moving, but he's having to hold it up. He's having to put effort into it. So his muscles are working, but nothing's moving. Similarly, he's sitting up against the wall. He's not moving, but he's having to work hard to keep himself in that position, okay? And that's what an isometric muscle contraction is. It's work, but not movement. Now, oh, what's happened here? Here we go. An isotonic muscle contraction is muscle work and movement. So this time, exercise is performed against an opposing force. An opposing force might be a weight, it might be a book, it might be a child, but it's something that causes you to move it, okay? So the body works to move the item with its muscles. And this is kind of the most common muscle contraction that people think about when they think about using their muscles. So if you were in the gym and you were doing bicep curls like that, or you were pressing like that, then that would be an isotonic muscle contraction. Similarly, me lifting my water bottle off my desk is an isotonic muscle contraction because my muscles are working to move the weight, okay? And if I were to pick up a child, that will be an isotonic muscle contraction because I am moving them with my muscles, okay? So here we have Mike again in the garden earlier today. See how he is moving the weight using his muscles? That's an isotonic muscle contraction. Similarly here, doing a bicep curl, he's moving the weight using his muscles, so it's an isotonic muscle contraction. Now, this one's a bit more complicated and we don't often see it in our day-to-day lives. So most people don't ever need to kind of know about it, but it's still important to understand. So an isokinetic muscle contraction is similar to an isotonic. So you're still moving. You're still moving your water bottle. You're still moving against the weight. So that it's not like an isometric where there's no movement. There is some movement with isokinetic. But the difference here is that the movement is a constant speed. So most isokinetic muscle contractions happen in the machine. So here you can see there is a woman strapped to a machine. She's got her ankle and her knee strapped into a machine. And what that machine is going to do is, regardless of how hard she pushes, it's going to control the speed at which her leg moves. So she could push really, 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 really hard, and it would still move at the set speed. Or she could just push a little bit and it's still going to move at a set speed. So the machine controls the speed of the movement regardless of how much force is applied. So it's a really specialist thing, and we only really use it in medical situations where we need to train the muscles, or in high performance sports situations where there is an issue with a muscle. And we need to examine it a bit more closely. So again, you're probably not going to use this in your day-to-day life, but it's still important to know about. Now, there are two types of cardiovascular exercise. So when I say cardiovascular, I'm talking heart, lungs, blood, and basically whatever gets your heart pumping, okay? So we have aerobic exercise and we have anaerobic exercise. Now, aerobic essentially means oxygen. So aerobic exercise is using oxygen and anaerobic exercise is not using oxygen, okay? So aerobic exercise is any continuous activity that increases your heart rate and your breathing rate. So if I were to go for a jog for 20, 30 minutes, just at a steady pace that increases my breathing rate, increases my pulse, that would be aerobic exercise, okay? Now, the way that aerobic exercise produces energy is via taking in oxygen. That's why it's really important when you're doing a run, when you're going for a cycle or going swimming, to take in deep breaths regularly, because that's how your body is fueling itself for exercise. It's at a lower to medium intensity, so you're not sprinting full out, just kind of going along at a steady pace. You're working, but you're not overdoing it. So it might be a brisk walk, it might be a gentle cycle, it might be a jog, it could be an aerobics class. You know, it's a moderate level of effort. As I said earlier, you're not killing yourself to get to the finish line. You're not going super, super fast and using as much energy as you can, but you're going at a nice steady pace. Now, this is what we talked about earlier with the question. Aerobic exercise has to be a minimum of 20 minutes to get the full benefit. So if you were to go for a 15-minute jog, that's great, but actually you need to stretch it to 20 minutes to get all those great benefits that we talked about at the beginning of the session, like strong bones and good sleep. So you need to aim for 20 minutes at least of aerobic exercise. Now, I really love anaerobic exercise. So anaerobic is about higher intensity, higher power. So this is sprinting for the finish line. This is your maximum effort. Now, because it's maximum effort, the body can't take in enough oxygen when you're breathing for the effort that it uses. Okay, so when I'm sprinting so fast that my body doesn't have time to breathe in oxygen, turn it into energy, and then use it all at once because everything's happening too quickly, okay? So what happens with anaerobic exercise is that we use energy that we've previously stored in our muscles. That energy comes from fats and carbohydrates, which is why it's really important to eat those things. So right now in your bodies, you will have a store of carbohydrates and fats in your body that instantly the body can turn into energy when you're at maximum capacity, okay? So we're talking high intensity, we're talking maximum effort. And because we're talking maximum effort and high intensity, we're talking a shorter session. So that's why I really like anaerobic exercise, because in 10 to 15 minutes, I can do some sprints, I can do some jumps, I can lift some heavy weights, and then I'm done. And that's a really great way to make the most of your time. So here, this person here is absolutely gunning it for the finish line. Everybody behind her is absolutely gunning it as well. They are using their anaerobic systems because their body cannot make the most of the oxygen they are intaking quickly enough to get energy, okay? They're going at maximum effort, full power, everything is maxed out. This lady over here, she's going to do that for like 20, 30 minutes, and that's fine. She's going at her own pace, she's going steady, she's not pushing herself too hard, and that's a great example of aerobic exercise. Dan, any more questions, or shall I keep going?
Naomi, everybody's listening. Nobody's asking questions. so well done.
We love it. Okay, so you'll see that on your requirement sheet, on your worksheet, that at the end of this presentation, you're going to have to build your own exercise program. So what you need to do is understand the key components of an exercise program so that you can use them when you do your exercise program. So I'm going to explain those components to you now. So a warm-up. It's really, really important that we warm up before we exercise. It's important to stretch our muscles and warm them up, because that means they're less likely to tear and cause us an injury. When muscles are cold, they're easier to tear than when muscles are warmer, because they're more flexible, they're more supple, and they're less prone to injury, okay? So most of you will know this, you know, when you have been for a run or you've done some exercise without first properly warming up, you normally ache more than you would do if you've warmed up. Also, it's really important in a warm-up just to get our heart pumping a bit and to get it going, to get it ready and prepared for exercise. because we know that if we start exercising without warming up, that it takes our heart a while to understand what's going on, which means that we can often start slower than we would do if we had a warm up. So if you play a team sport like basketball and you hadn't warmed up beforehand, your teammates might be a bit like, what's happened, you know, in the first couple of minutes, because your heart's not quite ready to exercise yet. So it's really important that we get the heart ready to go, we get our blood pumping, so we can be our best when we're exercising. So when you're warming up, you might kind of walk a bit quicker than you would do normally, and that can turn into a light jog, just to get your muscles moving, get your heart going. It can be static muscle stretches. So static means standing still, like we did earlier, using your arms, just stretching out a bit and down into your legs. Or dynamic muscle stretching, which is really popular now. It combines walking and moving with stretching. So the disadvantage of static stretching is that you might have just gone for a walk to increase your heart rate, but then you're going to stand still and warm up your muscles. And that means your heart rate goes down, right? So it's better to do dynamic muscle stretches. So you walk a couple of steps, then you hold your hand, you hold your leg in one hand, you walk a couple of steps, you switch over, just to keep your heart going.
Naomi,
so here, yeah.
Before you press play button, there's somebody just asked, how long should you do isometric exercise?
Isometric exercises, it depends. You know, it's all about building your strength. So right now I can do this for about a minute before my wrist starts to get really sore. And my physiotherapist has said to me they've got to do it for at least 2 minutes to be back healthy. You know, the wall sit that Michael demonstrated earlier, the longer you can do that, the stronger your muscles are. So just give it a go. And then whatever you can do today, try and do better in a week and just build on it. You know, there's no recipe for success. It all depends on where you're at now and where you want to be.
And so one day, if you see me just holding the hand like this for like all time, that means I'm just joking.
Means you're in prayer.
There's somebody else who is asking here, how do you exercise with arthritis, the joint pain they have?
So with arthritis and having arthritis, it's really important to keep moving, because we know that once you stop moving, the arthritis will likely get worse. So stretch. Yoga is really great for arthritis. Don't push it too far, but see where it's comfortable. It depends where the arthritis is and how serious it is, but if you can lift weights, make your bones stronger, that will really, really help you.
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you.
You're welcome. So here is a video of Mike showing us some great stretches to do before you do some physical activity. The important part of stretching is to do it for as long as you can. So we normally say about 30 seconds per stretch is good. Mike's just going to do it quickly to show you what exercises you can do, but you've got to do it for longer than he's doing it, okay? So here's some neck stretches to get the neck warmed up. Then he's going to stretch his upper arms, and that stretches your chest as well, which is really important. Now he's going to stretch the back of his arms. So he's going to put his hand behind his head and push it down. For the more flexible among you, you may actually be able to get your hands to touch behind your back. That's really cool. Stretch up to the sky, stretch up your back, great. Stretch your lower back, really press into it, that's great. Okay, and then get your hips moving. Do some circles with your hips, get your hips feeling loose. That's really important because we know that our legs come from our hips. So if our legs are stiff, it's normally because our hips are stiff. So stretch your upper thighs, your quadriceps. Using one hand, try and keep your balance. And then stretch the backs of your legs and your lower legs. You can do that with one foot in front of the other and leaning back, almost sitting down into it. That's really useful. And again, sit down into it. That's really helpful. Now, when he steps forward, he's going to be stretching. I'll point it out to you now, just in his hip, just there. That's why he's stretching at the top of his hip. Really elongate the muscles, get them ready for exercise, make them supple, make them warm. And that's really, really important to reduce the likelihood of injury. So thanks, Mike. Up on his toes to stretch out his calves. And then finally, just rotate the ankles a little bit to get your ankles, try not to fall over. There you go. Try to get your ankles moving. Cool. So we've talked about the next component of your exercise program, which is an anaerobic and or aerobic exercise. So you might want to do cycling, swimming, running, walking, skipping, aerobics, dancing. If you live in a snowy country, you might want to go skiing. There are loads of things you can do. Even playing volleyball, you know, gets your heart going. That's a really cool thing to do as well. So these activities, many of them could be aerobic and anaerobic. So it all depends on how you're doing the activity. So if you go for a run, you might go for a jog, and that would be aerobic activity. But if you go for a run, you might go sprinting, and that would be anaerobic activity. So it's not necessarily the activity itself, it's how you're doing the activity that's really important. Now, this is my favorite, strength exercises. We know strength exercises are absolutely key for building muscles. We know that having strong muscles helps us reduce the likelihood of injuries. It helps us have stronger joints, but also it can help us lose weight as well. And that's really important for some people. So strength activities, you can do strength activities in the gym with weights, but because we are, many of us, locked down, Mike and I thought we'd give you some examples of things you can do at home, in the garden or whatever. So this is it's not quite working, is it? Sorry, bear with me 2 seconds. Try this one instead. So here's some mountain climbers to get your abs working, or some press ups to work out your chest and your arms. If those are too hard, you can drop to your knees and you press up like that instead, which can be really useful if the full press up is too hard, and it is too hard for me, so there's no pressure if it is. Or you could do some squat jumps, and those are really, really good for your legs. So squat down, jump up as high as you can, and that's a great way to do some strength training. You can also do some lunges. So you can put your leg backwards into a lunge, or you can go into a forward lunge like that. So you can go backwards or forwards or both when you're lunging, which can be really good for you as well. So thanks, Mike, for demonstrating that for us. And then finally, everybody knows what these are, some sit-ups to keep your abs strong and healthy. Let's see if this one's working again.
Naomi, as you're trying to make that one work, a few questions came in, and somebody asked which exercise should be good for your back, particularly spine they're talking about.
Okay. Which activity, sorry, was that?
Yeah, that's right. Which exercise would be good for their back, or their, oh, here it is, the video is back.
No, it's not. It's not going to work, but that's okay.
Okay.
So things that are good for your back, I fully believe that, well, everything in the body is connected, okay? So the stronger your legs are, the stronger your core is, the stronger your back is going to be. Because if your back is having to support weak legs, then it's going to get even weaker. If your back is having to support a weak core, a weak tummy, then your back is going to get weaker. So things you can do to strengthen your legs, like lunges and squats, will be really helpful. Things you can do to strengthen your core, like doing the plank or mountain climbers or sit-ups, they'll be really useful as well. If someone's got a back injury, I wouldn't recommend doing back exercises because I don't know how bad the injury is. But if you start with your legs and your core, I don't think you can go very wrong.
Naomi, before we go to that cool down slide, somebody's asking what is the good time of a day to do the exercises, and somebody's preparing for a running marathon, and they're just asking for how long you think they should be spending time in aerobic.
Okay, so the first question was the time of day to exercise. Every time of day has a different purpose, so it depends why you're exercising. So for me, I really like the psychological benefits I get from exercise. So if I've had a stressful day at work, I really like to go to the gym on the way home, get rid of it, and then I can go home and feel better. And I'm not kind of sitting with my work stress all day. So that's why I like exercising in the evening. My fiance likes to exercise in the morning because it gets him out of bed and it gets him energized for the day. There is no one time of the day that's better than the other. It just is what works best for you. I always say, you know, if you're trying to get back into exercise, choose the time that best suits you, because otherwise you're going to build an unsustainable habit. So actually you should be asking the question to yourself and saying, what's the best time for me? Because that's what's going to make your exercise program sustainable. With relation to the marathon running, I am not a marathon expert, so I don't know. I would imagine that most of your time needs to be aerobic, and you really need to be building that aerobic system. However, as your body starts to tire after a marathon, full respect, I don't think I could ever do one, but as your body starts to tire, you are going to be using your anaerobic system a bit more, because your body is simply sick and tired of aerobic exercise. So it's still important to exercise anaerobically. I would maybe do some sprint drills, some hill sprints, but I wouldn't prioritize that over aerobic running at all.
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you.
No problem. So we've done our warm-up, we've done our anaerobic or aerobic activities. We might have done some strength training as well. And now it's time for us to finish exercising. So it's really important to cool down for similarly the same reasons why it's really important to warm up. We don't want to just stop exercising because then our heart will go, oh, I'm not quite sure what's going on. Do I continue to beat quickly or can I have a rest? It gets a bit confused. It's better to gradually reduce it than to just stop. That can be a little bit dangerous. It can lead to heart attacks, for example. So it's better to ease off than just stop. But also, if we allow our muscles to cool down, if we give them time to get used to going back to normal, then they are likely to have fewer injuries and we're less likely to be stiff the next day. Now, that's really important because in your exercise program, you are going to have to exercise quite regularly. And you can't exercise regularly if your muscles are stiff. So it's really important to prioritize your cool down. And you can do that by doing the same things that I showed you in the warm-up. But really the best thing for a cool down is think of the activity you were doing, do it a bit slower for a bit, and then gradually slow down and stop. So if I've been out for a run, I will slowly reduce the pace of my run down to a walk, and then I'll stop. If someone goes for a cycle ride, reduce the gears, go a bit easier, go a bit slower, and then stop. Don't just stop dead. Now, heart rate when we're exercising, that's all about how quickly our heart is beating to get stuff around our body that we need, okay? We've talked about how aerobic exercise uses oxygen. So if we're using oxygen, we need to get it around the body quick to our muscles, okay? So to measure our pulse, we all know that we need to put our hand on our wrist and count how many beats we can feel, or we can put it up to our neck and count how many beats we can feel. Most people say to count the beats over 15 or 20 seconds, 20 or 30 seconds, excuse me, and then multiply your answer. So if you've measured your pulse for 20 seconds, then you multiply your answer by 3. And if you've measured your pulse for 30 seconds, then you multiply your answer by 2. And that gives you the heart rate in beats per minute. So how many times is your heart beating every single minute? So when we're exercising, it's really hard to measure our pulse and run at the same time, okay? Lots of people now have smartwatches that do it for them, but not everybody does. I don't, and I exercise really regularly. So I'm going to tell you how I do it. So when I'm exercising and I want to take my pulse, I have to stop because it's not safe to try and do it while you're exercising. It's also not good because you're not properly exercising, you're concentrating on something else. So stop what you're doing for a second, take your pulse in 20 or 30 seconds, make the calculation to get beats per minute, and then add 10%. So if I was out for a run and I stopped and I took my pulse and my pulse was 30 in 30 seconds, I would then multiply it to get to 60 beats per minute, and then I would add 10%, so that would be 66 beats per minute. The reason we add 10% is because we stopped exercising. So when we stop exercising, our heart rate goes down a little bit, and we want to find out what it was before it went down, which is why we need to add the couple of extra numbers to make sure that we're kind of getting an accurate picture of what it's like when our heart is going as strong as it can. Some people use a stethoscope like they have at the doctors. Some people have a smartwatch, like I said. And some people, like Lionel Messi in this picture here, this thing he's wearing, this black thing, is actually a heart rate monitor, which allows his coaching staff to see how quickly his heart is beating. So there is amazing technology out there that can help us understand what our exercise heart rate is. But actually, this or this is absolutely fine. Now, it's important to make some calculations. Yes, go on.
Just to give you, we have probably about maybe about 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm nearly there.
And also we have a few questions. Somebody mentioned that you missed one of the slides for the word I cannot pronounce. It's spelled C-A-L.
Calisthenics. So calisthenics is an old-fashioned word for strength exercises. So apologies if that confused anyone. Strength and calisthenics are the same thing. The honor was written in 1980, so it used the word calisthenics. I just updated it to use the word strength because that's what we use now, but it's kind of the same thing. So apologies if that confused anyone.
That's great. As long as we clarify, that is fine. So let's go to the slides, and then we have some questions.
Okay. So we've talked about how we calculate our beats per minute when we're exercising, but actually we need to know what that information means. If I'm exercising at 66 beats per minute, is that enough? Is that not enough? I need to understand what that's like in context, okay? So to calculate your minimum heart rate for aerobic exercise, remember, exercise using oxygen, there's some maths we can do. I don't like maths, so I apologize for having to include this, but it's quite simple maths. So if I can do it, I think you can too. So if you're a man, you take your age. So my brother is 24, and you divide the age by 2. So that gives us 12. You then subtract the answer from 205. So 205 minus 12 would be 193. Then you times that number by 0.8. I can't do that in my head. So I've given you a little example down here. So my nephew is 18. 18 divided by 2 is 9. 205 minus 9 is 196. 196 times 0.8 is 156.8, which we round up to 157. So my 18-year-old nephew, if he is not at 157 beats per minute, then he is not working hard enough to get the benefits of exercise. So my 66 beats per minute, I need to up it because that is definitely not enough, okay? So I now know that when my nephew stops and takes his pulse, if he's not going at 157, he's not working hard enough, okay? So if you can keep a secret, I'm 27, okay? So we'll do it the same for women now. Women, it's slightly different. So women, we don't have to divide by 2. We just subtract our whole age from 220. So 220 minus 27, which is my age, gives us 193. Then you multiply that answer by 0.8. So for me, that's 154.4, which I can round up to 155. So I know that when I'm exercising, if I'm not at 155 beats per minute, I'm not getting the aerobic benefits of exercise. The importance of this is there's no point exercising if you're not going to get the benefits from it, okay? So we need to make sure that we're exercising hard enough, that we're trying hard enough, that we get the benefits from exercise. Now, the final thing, this whole presentation has given you, hopefully, all the things you need to be able to build a really cool exercise program. The requirements of the honor say that you've got to do this 4 times a week for 3 months. For those of us who are in lockdown, this is a great activity. It's really important for us to stay fit and healthy at this time. So it's a really great opportunity to invest in your health with a little bit more time than perhaps you might normally have. So the honor says that you need to record your warm-up exercises. So you need to record what you do and for how long you do them. So before I went for my run yesterday, I did a 5-minute walk and I did 5 minutes of stretching before I ran. So I would write that down. Then you have to record your exercises that you do, your anaerobic exercises or your aerobic exercises. Don't worry too much about whether they're anaerobic or they're aerobic. Just write it down, okay? It doesn't really matter. So yesterday I went for a 25-minute jog. I would write that down. I would then write down that I did some strength exercises at the end. I did some press-ups, some squats, and some sit-ups. And then I did a cool down. So I did 5 minutes of walking, 5 minutes of stretching again. So I'd write that down all in my book, and that's one entry. So you need to do that 4 times a week for 3 months. Now, some of you don't need to think too much about this because you're doing it already. Some of you can just record Joe Wicks. If you're doing Joe Wicks, that's a great activity to record. Some of you can record playing football in the garden with your brother. That's absolutely fine. You know, it doesn't need to be swimming or jogging or running, anything like that. It can just be something where you're being physically active, and that's really important. I've included some top tips for you as well. So I always think it's great to start with activities that you can actually do. Don't set goals that are too high for yourself too soon. Make your way up to those goals, absolutely, but give yourself something realistic to start with. The biggest one for me is choose exercises that you actually enjoy. We want people to look forward to exercise rather than dread exercise. So don't think that you need to do this because that's what everyone else is doing. Just do what you love and you'll look forward to doing it. Similarly, have fun. Exercise is supposed to be fun. Make the most of it. Play around with what you like and dislike. I used to love swimming. Now I hate swimming. So just see what works for you. It might change, and that's totally cool. And just remember that if you are trying to do some aerobic activity, that it needs to be a minimum of 20 minutes. And that's it. Hopefully that's kind of giving you all the information you need.
Yeah, a lot of people were asking the question about how long they need to exercise, and you're saying about 20 minutes a day?
20 minutes, if you're looking at kind of aerobic exercise, so that longer, steady state, moderate level, I think 20 minutes is good. If you're thinking about doing sprints and jumps and more anaerobic stuff, 10 to 15 minutes is great. But if you want to play a football for an hour, then do that. Don't feel like you have to do it shorter.
Some people are asking, what is a good exercise to burn fat? It's not like anybody here needs to burn fat, but in case anybody needs, what would be the good exercises to burn fat? Maybe they can make a plan towards that direction.
Sure. Great exercises to burn fat. I would really recommend starting with some anaerobic exercises. Working at maximum capacity, remember, it uses the muscle stores of fat and carbohydrates. So if you can use those, then you're going to reduce the fat that's in your body. So sprinting, jumping, skipping, strength training, high intensity interval training. So do short bursts, then have a little rest, not too long, then do another short burst, then have a little rest, but make sure it's at maximum capacity, and that will really, really help. But also, don't underestimate the benefit of just getting 20 minutes a day. If you can build that sustainable habit, then that will be great.
Excellent. Naomi, if it's possible, stop sharing your screen so we can see some people's faces as well. So
is that okay?
Oh, very good. Thank you, Naomi. We are just about to finish, guys. We did take 3 hours of your time. Let me just remind you, this is not designed for you to sit through all 3 honors. It's designed for you to choose some of the honors. But once again, I will unmute. So if it's possible, please, let's give a big clap to Naomi. Let's do a big clap. Yeah?